We'll be having a paper by Charles Holdefer, who is a lecturer at Poitiers University and teaches mostly American literature. And he's also a novelist, his last novel being The Contractor, which deals with the use of torture by Americans during the war in Iraq. So he'll be talking about the beginning of the First World War, I think. Am I right in saying that? Okay, but his title being as surely doomed as the hippopotamus, George Orwell and the anachronistic writer. And thereafter we'll be having a paper by Joseph Masnan, who is at the end of his PhD at Manchester University and teaches at Manchester University, mostly teaches modern European history. And then we'll be having a paper by Antoine Capet, who sits there, who is a specialist of Winston Churchill in the Second World War, and he'll be looking at, I quote, George Orwell and the phony left, 1939-1945. Okay, so.
Thank you. An earlier version of this paper circulated a bit by the internet, and I've made some inevitable revisions. Also, I've cut out a number of things just to respect the time limit, so I hope what I'm going to say is still intelligent. In 1939, by my count, George Orwell gathered 2,395 eggs. He started the year convalescing in Morocco, a place he didn't particularly like because of its desert vegetation, and the mental distance from the events in Europe was so preoccupying. In his correspondence and diaries, touching on subjects from hens to Hitler, he is restless and sometimes chafing. He was in the process of finishing Coming Up for Air, a novel steeped in nostalgia for an earlier age, and full of foreboding of a coming up war and the beginning of an era symbolized by the rubber truncheon. At the same time, as he remarked in a letter to his friend Jack Commons, who was looking after Blair's place in England during their absence, I don't think anyone will drop a bomb in Wallington, and it might even be profitable to expand the fowl industry a bit, as eggs are sure to be scarce and sought after. Now, it would be absurd to see Orwell as a war profiteer. Rather, this is common sense advice in anticipation of a cataclysm. Politics, in a way, was poultry management writ large. By the end of March, Coming Up for Air was completed and he returned to England, where in the following months at Wallington, amid goats and chickens, he continued to write commissioned book reviews about serious political topics, like the Spanish War, totalitarian regimes, and imperialism. He also embarked on his next book, a series of long essays which, though in essence highly political, shift the focus to literature. Intriguingly, in this time of crisis, Orwell chose to linger over boys' weeklies and to offer spirited defenses of Charles Dickens, T.S. Eliot, and Henry Miller, strange bedfellows indeed, while stating almost certainly we're moving into an age of totalitarian dictatorships. He nonetheless found it important to put Billy Bunter and W.H. Auden in context. Now, I would like to focus on Orwell's 1939 writings, not just because of the obvious historical resonance of this pivotal year, but also because it reminds us of something other than the turbulence of the times. It shows Orwell, the political animal, grappling with literary sensibilities that date back to his childhood and precede his political awareness. Orwell is disturbed by the seeming superfluity of the writer in dire times, a problem that would occupy his political conscience for the rest of his life. In this paper, I will privilege the literary, which in 1939 sometimes gets short shrift. Now, I'm glad to echo William Pritchard in saying that Orwell matters in ways different, though not in the least incompatible with those in which Christopher Hitchens says he matters. If, as Orwell believed, the coming war was going to tear Western civilization to pieces, it left the writer sitting on a melting iceberg, an anachronism, a hangover from the bourgeois age, as surely doomed as the hippopotamus. With this in store, aside from the practical matter of gathering eggs, what was the writer to do? Or, to use Orwell's description, what was an anachronistic hippopotamus to do? Its anticipated demise seems almost a natural process, expressed by a combination of images that are easy to conflate. That poor hippopotamus with freezing feet, what could be more lugubrious? Is there no way to survive on a shrinking iceberg? How can one escape time? Orwell offers an answer of sorts by bringing up another big beast, the whale, But before I address this vision of the future, let me offer a few words about the past, which Orwell patiently outlines from a literary perspective in the 3 essays written later in '39, which are collected in the volume Inside the Whale. First, there's Charles Dickens. Orwell devotes more than 20,000 words to a sympathetic but unsparing assessment of his strengths and weaknesses, both aesthetic and political, with special emphasis on the moral dimension of Dickens' writing. This, Orwell argues, allowed Dickens to be subversive without offering any constructive suggestion. Dickens was not interested in society as much as in human nature. He has no remedy or sense of process, only a general attitude along the lines of, if men would only behave decently, the world would be decent. Orwell attempts to see if this might be something other than a platitude. Does this moral approach offer any real hope for the hippopotamus' survival? Aside from Orwell's somewhat nebulous references to decency, the closest thing to an answer comes in Orwell's consideration of Dickens' technique, which he focuses on when he focuses on more explicitly literary concerns. While allowing that all art is propaganda, he's quick to point out that not all propaganda is art. Moreover, art is not only propaganda. This is particularly evident in Dickens' gift for rendering individuals. The novels are rotten architecture, but wonderful gargoyles. He observes that the characters simply go on, behaving like idiots in a kind of eternity. This sounds like criticism, and it is, but Orwell is also expressing, I believe, a sort of envy. Oh, if only it were possible to still write that way, in an eternity, unencumbered by the urgency of the present. Orwell says of Dickens, no modern man could combine such purposelessness with so much vitality. In an astute close reading of a passage from the Pickwick Papers, Orwell focuses on what he identifies as the unnecessary detail. Here, a baked shoulder of mutton with potatoes under it, and argues that this detail and the accumulation of others like it are the key to Dickens' survival. Their superfluity is not a flaw, but an asset, because they mark, morally speaking, a sort of generosity. Orwell concludes with the famous description of how he imagines Dickens' appearance and the sound of his laughter as generously angry. Such a writer would be despised by all the smelly little orthodoxies which are now contending for our souls. Biographers have suggested that Orwell's unconsciously describing himself. Perhaps, though I might qualify the speculation with another, that Orwell is describing what he wants to be, what in 1939 he's still struggling to achieve. Finding the vital and necessary detail is no simple matter for the artist. Unnecessary in regard to what? Mere escapism does not suffice, because much of what appears unnecessary in the present is in fact purposeful and is tainted by the smelly little orthodoxies of the past. In Boys Weekly, Orwell sums up the mental world of magazines like The Gem and Magnet as follows. The year is 1910 or 1940, but it's all the same. The king is on his throne and a pound is worth a pound. The grim gray battleships of the British fleet are steaming up the channel at the outposts of the Empire. The monocled Englishmen are holding the niggers at bay. Everything will be the same, forever